Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Kat, and for today, we're gonna be taking a look at all of these highlighter palettes. We're gonna swatch all of them. I'm gonna let you guys know what I think about the formulas, all of that jazz, and so just sit back because I have a feeling this is gonna be a little bit of a longer video, but if you enjoy swatches of all the pretty shiny things, today is one of those videos for you. So definitely stick around for that. So we're just gonna immediately jump in with the first one, which is from Kaja. This is the Viva Shine bento box. It's a very cute little like holographic heart that they have on there. And then there are 3 different shades. So definitely very different looking shades when you open it up, which I think is super fun because it's not your typical looking types of highlighters, especially the second one. But this is what the first one looks like. You can see a little bit more sparkle chunky, and then the second one even more so with these like little white flecks that are in there. And then the last one is definitely a bit of a deeper highlight, but it looks kind of like, I don't know, like a marble swirl. So we're gonna swatch all 3 shades. Ooh, it is definitely, the first one feels definitely a bit more gritty. Okay. Here we go. But very pretty. Ooh, okay, and it has a lot of different like colored sparkles in there. I would say very close to kind of holographic. Has a bit of that greenish, like lime green base to it. But then you can see as I get in close, all of these other colors as it's trying to focus on there. That's where you can really see, look at all those different colors in there. It is super, super pretty. And then the second shade also feels a little bit thicker, but not quite as gritty as the first one. It definitely smooths out a bit more. And you can definitely see that the white chunks kind of go away. So it looks like that was just a topper thing on there. But here is this guy. And definitely this one is more of an opaque formula. So not as much of like a good topper. It is very substantial when you swatch it. You can see almost none of my skin shows through on there, but it is a very, very nice shine on there. A bit silvery champagne of a shade with maybe ever so slight, like a little bit of a peachy undertone, but primarily champagne-y white, but very, very beautiful. I think so far though the first one I like more than the second. And then the last one on here is a very smooth consistency. Also definitely a deeper shade. So if you were someone with a deeper skin tone, this one would be very nice for you. And there we go. Also a little bit thinner. Definitely not quite as thick of a consistency as the first 2. You can see it's just a very nice kind of light glow. So I would say also in the summertime, this would be really, really nice. If you're someone that gets a nice tan, this would just add a little bit of a glow to your skin, which is super nice. So of the 3, this is probably the most natural looking. I mean, definitely for my skin tone, it is too deep, but I mean, it would make a nice bronzer for me, I suppose. But I think that for like a medium skin tone, this would probably be a really nice, like adding a little bit of a glow to your skin. And then if you have a deeper skin tone, this would be a really, really nice highlight on there. So that is the Kaja bento box. Then we're gonna move on to Adept Cosmetics. I have the Ketracel White palette. They are in the near future coming out with, I think, like the counter to this, which is going to be the Ketracel Black palette, but it is going to be similar from what I've heard as far as it being a highlighter palette. It's just going to be different shades, obviously. So this guy has 4 shades in there, 2 of which are cream. That is these first 2 on here, and then you have powder for these 2. So the cream ones I can definitively say were my favorites out of the 4, just because I don't have a ton of cream highlighters, and these were just absolutely gorgeous. So the first one of the cream highlights, I mean, if you want something that's gonna blend out really, really nicely, this'll do it. Oh, it's so smooth, and it adds this really nice little bit of a light layer, and they are definitely duo/multi-chrome in how they shine. So you can see the doggos have new toys, and so the squeaking may or may not continue throughout. If it gets too obnoxious, I'll take it away. So you can see it starts off a little bit like light pink that we can see on there, and then as I get closer, you can see it transitions to a bit of a yellowish green on there, but very pretty, a little bit of some peach tones in there as well. And just a nice light shade that will blend out absolutely beautiful. So it just adds this like slight glow on there with these different colors. And you can definitely see it from all the way back here. It does add a nice shine, but it is definitely one of those ones where there is no cast to it whatsoever. You can see a little bit of the pink, a little bit better on my finger, but no cast. It blends out so beautifully. And then the second cream shade, instead of having the pink be kind of the main shade, this one is a bit more of like an orangey tone. Make sure that I'm not swatching over it. There we go. And again, just smooth as butter on there. And I'm definitely seeing a good amount of, like, you can see that peachy tone, but I'm also seeing a good amount of greens and yellows in there that you can see a whole lot more when I bring it in close. And then once it focuses there, you can really see the difference between the pinky peach tone and then this kind of orangey yellow shade. Very beautiful for both. And again, it just kind of depends on if you are someone that prefers more of the pinky tones or more of the orange tones, but you're gonna get a really nice mixture of shades depending on how the light hits it. So it's not just gonna stay with those two tones, but depending on what kind of blush shade you use. I know I lean a bit more towards the orangey ones, which you can definitely tell today. And so with something like the look I have on today, I would definitely be leaning more towards the orange one because it would just frame the blush really nicely. Those are the only two cream blush formulas that I will have to show you guys today. Everything else is pressed pigments. And so it's gonna be very interesting to see how they compare, because in the palettes, I think that was the biggest part of why I wanted to do this video, is that in the palettes, they look so similar. You're like, I'm buying the same thing, and you are not. And so I wanted to show you guys that each of the palettes from these different brands is in fact unique, because even though they look similar in the pans, the formulas are different on all of them. There is not a single formula in here that I would say is identical to another. Some of them might be similar, but none of them are identical. So you are getting unique things in each palette. So it's worth checking out if you have a particular formula that you really, really enjoy. Go towards that palette. And that's why I wanted to show you guys the whole gamut of what you can get. So the next shade in the Adept palette is going to be the first of the rainbow shades. So we have this lighter pressed powder, and it is a smoother powder consistency. I can tell you that right now. It is very similar in consistency to this third shade from the Kaja box. So here we go. And you can definitely see the amount of shine on this guy. It is a little bit more sheer, not quite as opaque, but absolutely gorgeous. You can see just a little bit of that rainbow nature of it comes through, but it primarily blends out to a mainly white base, and then has ever so slight that the sparkles are like all of those different shades. So as you get in close, you can see a little bit of the blues, a little bit of some yellows, some pinks in there, and it's just very, very pretty, but primarily that white base to it. So from far away, you are seeing primarily that white kind of highlighter. And then the last shade is this super deep rainbow shade. So I am very curious to see how this guy goes, because it was the only one out of the palette that I hadn't really dug into yet. Oh my God. Wow. That is not a highlighter. That is just a straight up multi-chrome that I wanted on my eyes, but I definitely do not want that on my face. It starts, so it has definitely a black base that you would expect from a multi-chrome that is highly pigmented. It is very opaque. Starts off with like some limey yellow to green, and then as you get in closer, you can see that deeper green into a bit of a blue. I'm definitely seeing the blue. It's kind of like an aquamarine blue into a deeper blue. And then I'm not really getting like the orange and the purple from the top of the rainbow. So let me see if I can just get those two and see what happens. Ooh, okay. So if you only grab from certain sections, you can definitely see a bit more of that purple on the top because I didn't blend it in quite as much. And then you're also getting a little bit more of the yellowish into orange rather than the straight up green. So that is fun that you can kind of mix those around. And even with me swirling it, you can still clearly see the rainbow, which lets you know that it's not just a topper spray, it is throughout the entire thing. And so very beautiful, but not a highlighter in my opinion. That is 100% just like an eyeshadow. Like I would wear that on my eyes, not on my face whatsoever. But that is all 4 that we have right here from the Adept palette. So then moving on, we have from Cosmic Brushes. This is their Frosting Highlighter Trio. It came with their most recent palette that they had come out with. What was it called? It's around here somewhere. But their most recent one that they had come out for the summertime, you were able to pick this up along with it. I don't know if they'll be bringing this one back, but I still wanted to swatch it for you guys so that you could see the difference in how they swatch versus some other palettes, because this is the start of where the palettes kind of look the same. So here we have the 3 shades. You can see very, very pretty, but fairly standard looking highlighters from inside the pan. The first shade is Golden Apple, and it definitely has as the primary shade a bit of a greenish like yellow. And so that is this guy right here. You can definitely see the greenish yellow, and then as I bring it in close, you can almost get a little bit of like a bluish purple on there just because of how the light is hitting it. But very, very pretty, and it is not as sheer as the shades from the Adept palette, but not completely opaque like the eyeshadow shade was. So I would say this is a really, really nice, strong highlighter. I mean, you can see the glow from all the way back here. It's really gorgeous. So this would be a bit more of a pigmented highlighter to use if you are someone that's using their finger. All of these highlighters, if you just go in with a brush, are going to be a bit more muted. They're not going to be as crazy unless you were using the very, very chunky style one, because that's more glitter flakes, and so those will show up much, much more than these more kind of creamy formulas that we're seeing. The second shade has a bit more of a pink base to it, and it feels a little bit thicker of a formula than the first one. Yet interestingly enough is a bit more sheer, and I am seeing that it goes kind of between a pinky peach and a yellow on there. So that is this guy right here. There's the peachy pink tone, and then I'm catching like a little bit of yellow depending on how the light hits it, but definitely not as much yellow as this guy is giving, that is for sure. But you can definitely still see very nice glow, but not quite as much of an impact as this guy has. The last shade, ooh, it's like almost like a kind of cushiony feel to it, very soft, and it has blue as the base to it. So, oh, okay, very pigmented for this guy. And I am seeing a blue into kind of purplish pink. So there's the blue into purple, and I'm not sure if the pink will show up, but definitely blue into purple, and then it just gives off ever so slight a little bit of pink as well. But it is a very beautiful shade. I mean, all 3 of these are super pretty, and I would say probably like your most quintessential highlighter style of like formula, the way it looks. Very good highlighters. And so if they do bring this back and you were not able to pick it up before, I would highly recommend. It was not expensive at all, and so if you're able to bundle it with one of their palettes, like, it's a steal. And so I was really glad that I picked it up, because this is just, it's just a good highlighter palette. Like, there's nothing else to say, it's just solid. And I would also say that the way in which it performs is like in between the like super bold highlighters where you can see people from space versus the super natural ones where you can barely see, it's just the tiniest bit of glow. This is like right in between, slowly heading into the more aggressive highlighters. So then we have from Sugar Drizzle, this is their highlighter palette, and says on here, on top of the mountain and beneath the stars. And the stars kind of are raised up and they have a little bit of shimmer in them, a little bit of holographic on the text, which is super cute. And then there are 6 shades in this palette. So here we go. And again, this is where we're starting to see that within the pan, they're looking a little bit similar, right? Just the way in which the formula comes across, it looks similar to me, where, you know, obviously after really getting in and swatching them, you can see a little bit of a difference on there, that these guys are looking a bit more creamy. I have a feeling that because of the light, it's gonna be hard to show that. These do look a bit more gritty just in the palette from how I'm looking at it, but the shades seem similar. So we're gonna go ahead and swatch them, see how they show up, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So the first one is, ooh, they are also very, very soft, but a bit more chunky in nature. And we'll definitely be able to see that in the swatches. So I'm gonna start swatching on the inside of my wrist because we're gonna end up using both arms because there's so many shades. So here we go. Rogue, Rogue, please stop. This is the new toy. There were 2 of them. They got them a couple hours ago. The first one is already dead. This one, I am shocked, still has its squeaker, but we're just gonna put it on top of the desk right there. So here's the first shade. You can see just glowing like crazy. And when I bring it in, you can very clearly see the blue that is on there. And then ever so slightly, like underneath, I'm catching a little bit of like a pinkish, like a peachy pink, but primarily the blue. And it is very, very pretty. Also, depending on how the light hits it, it might come across as a bit of like a yellowish green. There's the yellowish green on there for sure. Yeah, and then when you come in close, you catch the blue. So very nice first shade. And I would say formula wise, it is a little bit more of that flaky, thick highlighter rather than the more sheer type that we're getting with the Cosmic brushes or with Adept. This guy is definitely heading a little bit back into the chunky style. You can see a little bit of the flaky chunks around the edges. So if you are someone that prefers that more chunky style of highlight, the Sugar Drizzle palette is probably going to be a really good way for you to go. But if you prefer a little bit more of that sheer, smooth consistency, this one might not be for you. So the second shade that we have in here starts off with a bit of like a yellowish pink base, also a bit of a chunky boy. So here we go with that one. Ooh, it is beautiful though. Holy smokes. Look at that second shade. So definitely seeing that pinkish purple as the base on there, and it is just absolutely beautiful. There you catch a little bit of that peachy tone into the pink, and then just very solidly purple. I am really enjoying that shade. That is beautiful. It is also a bit more opaque than the first one was, but both are just absolutely gorgeous, but definitely a bit of a thicker formula than what we have seen from the others thus far. All right, the third shade starts off with a bit of like a pinkish to maybe blue, and it also feels more creamy. It's not quite that that chunky consistency. This one feels a bit more like the final shade in the Cosmic Brushes one, where it was like almost that pillowy soft kind of feel. And yeah, it's definitely a bit more of that sheer, but that, oh my goodness, the purple, the way that it catches that is so pretty. I mean, look at that glow first off, and then when it comes in close, there's the purple, and you can really see the difference where this is coming across more pink now. This guy looks a bit bluish purple and is so gorgeous on there. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. From far away, here are the first three that we are seeing, and you can really see how the colors change depending on if you're further away or closer up. So that is beautiful. I don't know if you can tell that I really enjoy the highlighters that are a little bit of that more sheer, but just the glow is just crazy. So the fourth shade starts off a bit more green, is also more of that creamy rather than the chunky boy consistency. So you are getting a good mix of formulas within this palette, which is really, really nice. So here is that, ooh, it's almost like a bit more aquamarine rather than just straight up green. So here's the fourth one. And there you can see it looks more bluish, aquamarine-y, kind of similar to the first one that we swatched, but the formula is very different. It's not as chunky, it's a bit more sheer, but the glow is still really, really nice. And then, I mean, you can tell when I do this and you don't see anything, that is part of what lets you know that there is no cast with the highlighters. So it's always nice to kind of rotate your hands around if you're gonna pre-swatch before applying a highlighter, because then you'll be able to tell, okay, if I turn my arm a certain way and I can't see it at all, there's no cast that's going to be left depending on if you're looking straight on, because the point of a highlighter is to just accentuate certain things, but you don't want it to just be something where you're seeing all kinds of weird, like grayish toned casts that sometimes happens. And so when you turn your face is when you want to see a little bit of that glow, but then when you're straight on, you don't want to see anything. And so that is something where, depending on how you turn and shift your face, you'll be able to know, does it have a cast or does it not? So I always recommend pre-swatching before you use something, because otherwise I've had it too many times where I started to put on the makeup and I was like, my face was perfect, and then I ruined it with something. So I like to pre-swatch just so I know what I'm getting myself into. Then the fifth shade, okay, is not quite as soft as the two that we just swatched before, but is still definitely more of a creamy rather than a chunky one. And it starts off very, very pink. Oh yeah. She's a very pink one and very pretty. Look at that pink. How just, I mean, absolutely fuchsia pink on there. That is gorgeous. I love a good pink highlighter. They're just so, so pretty on there. It is just gorgeous. So that is the fifth one, and you can just see really, really nice amount of glow from all of them. And then the final shade that we have is a bit of like a combination between blue and purple, and also a bit more on the creamy side as well. So it looks like maybe a bit of a flakiness to this one. So I would say it's like halfway between the other ones that we've been swatching. And it definitely starts off with a really beautiful kind of purplish tone. So here is the last one, and there is the purple. When I come in close, you can see this one is also a bit purple, but I think this one is definitely the more purple out of the two. And just all 6 shades are very, very beautiful. From far away, you can still really, really see them very, very nicely. But as soon as I tilt my arm, you can still see a little bit of the swatch, but the color goes away, the blindness goes away, so it's very minimal cast on there. So they ended up definitely being more like soft and creamy than I was expecting. Only the first 2 are a bit more on the chunky side. The others are definitely more on the creamy side. Next up we have from Blend Bunny. This is their Noctilucent palette, and it is very pretty with the writing on there. It's kind of a goldish with holographic on there. The colors are super pretty, and there are 6 shades in here. So here we are, and you can definitely see where they look a bit similar to some of the other shades that we have already swatched. So again, this will be more of a formula check than anything else, because the colors, I would imagine, are going to be somewhat similar. So I'm going to do these on the other arm, so that way we can kind of give a comparison to the other ones that we just swatched from Drizzle, so that way we have a better idea of, okay, what are we actually looking at. So the first shade, oh yeah, the feeling is definitely not nearly as smooth. It's a little bit of a slightly rougher consistency, not gritty by any means like we were getting with this glittery guy, but just a little bit more definitely headed into the flaky glitter side of highlighters. So here's the first shade, and it is blue as the base tone, but I'm also catching purples and pinks. So here we can really see the blue from far away. And then when I come in, you're catching the purple and the pink a little bit on there. Very, very nice. I would say medium opacity, very similar to the other guys where you can build it up, but starts off on a little bit more on the sheer side. So very, very pretty. And then if we're comparing the purple shades on here, you can definitely see where they are very similar to each other, just that these guys are a little bit, they don't stand out quite as much as this guy does. This is more opaque throughout, whereas the ones from Sugar Drizzle are a bit more on the, depending on where the light hits it, you'll definitely see it, and then it very quickly disappears. Whereas this guy is very, very nice and visible. The second shade is also feeling very similar to the first one and starts off with a very pink base and kind of goes into a yellowish peachy tone. You can definitely see the pink on there. And then as I come in close, a bit more of that yellowish kind of champagne-y shade that's coming in there. So very, very pretty with that one. I would say that that is definitely different from the, it's like if you took two of the shades from the Sugar Drizzle palette and combined them into one. So if I took this pinkish shade and this other kind of yellowish pink shade and put them into this guy, that would be kind of what I was getting. But the formula is definitely not the same. These are significantly more coverage than what you're getting with the swatch from these guys. So more sheer, more opaque. The third shade I don't think is similar to anything because it looks very like, yeah, it is very chromy, and I would not wear this as a highlighter. This is kind of similar to the situation with the Adept palette where I would wear this as an eyeshadow. It is like a burnt rose mauve-y tone into kind of a gold into yellow. So we have the mauve-y reddish burnt rose into kind of a brassy tone, and you catch a little bit of the fiery yellow right there as it was trying to focus on there. You could see it a bit more, but that guy definitely for me would not be a highlighter. What I would say is if you are someone that has a deeper skin tone, this could potentially be like a stunning blush. Like if you threw that on there and like kept it high on the cheekbones, oh my goodness. And if you have like a really beautiful deep skin tone, like dark chocolate, and you wear this, oh my gosh, I could just, that would look so beautiful. I would totally recommend that, just especially with the way that the shades change. But like a deep mauve-y burnt reddish kind of tone as a blush on there, I think looks absolutely gorgeous on deeper skin tones. This would be gorgeous for that. So the fourth shade, and definitely the consistency of all of these guys is the same throughout. It is not changing. They're all a little bit more of that slightly rougher texture. This guy is starting off with a yellow base to it and is just a very, very nice standard yellow highlighter. I'm not really noticing too much of a shift on this one, but it is just really, really beautiful. And I mean, it stands out from far away as well. But as I continue to swatch them, I can definitely tell that these are more pigmented, especially when I come in close. You can tell that versus the Sugar Drizzle ones, these guys from Blend Bunny are significantly more on the high impact side of highlighters. And so if you are someone that's wanting things to be more on the sheer side, but with a nice pop of color, the Sugar Drizzle ones are really good, just like the Cosmic Brushes ones. You can also see on here, comparing the Cosmic Brushes to the Blend Bunny, they are very similar in like the amount of pigment. And so I think those are more of a similar comparison, just that these guys are better as toppers. These guys are a little bit more on the opaque side, so not quite as sheer as what we were seeing with some of the others. And then the next shade, which I've been dipping into quite a bit because I love a good slimy green highlighter, is green. And it shifts also into a very beautiful blue. So here's the green at the start, kind of also goes a bit more yellowy. And then when you come in close, there it goes to the blue. So really, really fun shade with how it kind of changes its tone as you come in close and how the light hits it. So that one has been a super fun one for me. You can kind of see in the pan that like all of the kick up around the side of it, because I have just been digging into that one because it is definitely my favorite out of the whole palette. Because I just, especially with like some of the green looks that I've been doing lately, having just a fun green highlighter to add a pop of like even more. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing if you're wanting to like keep the majority of the look neutral but have your highlighter match your eye look is I won't really do anything on my eyes, maybe like a light beigey tone, but I'll have a fun colored highlighter and then I'll do the pop of the same highlighter in the inner corner so it ties the cheeks to the front of the eyes and just kind of pulls everything together, and it really makes my eyes stand out that way. So another fun thing that I enjoy doing with highlighters. You can tell I love highlighters. And then the last one on here, this one starts off more bluish. And this guy is definitely a flaky glitter highlighter. It is a chunky boy and very, very pretty. There's the blue, and then as I come in close, almost looks a bit purplish. And just a very common theme with a lot of blue highlighters is that they start off blue, but you can see purples and pinks in there. But as we come in close and we kind of look at that formula, you can see that that one is significantly more like flaky than some of the other ones that we have swatched from the same palette. And so I would say out of all of them, that formula is a bit more flaky. The others are just more of a nice, smooth application on there. So just something to keep in mind, but the whole palette is really, really beautiful. I mean, this guy, so pretty. But definitely for me, not a highlighter. I would wear that as an eyeshadow. All right, we are down to the final 3 palettes. So the first one up that we have is from Glam Shop. I had definitely swatched all of these in a previous video when I had done a Glam Shop haul. It was a few years ago, so I've had this guy for a little while on there. Very beautiful palette. Again, we're noticing it looks very similar to the majority of the shades from the other palettes. The only one that's kind of different is this guy right here, which is a bit more goldish in nature. And so we're gonna jump right in. And I can tell you that this one feels more similar to the Blend Bunny palette rather than like the other palettes that we've swatched, but it is more, I would say, be prepared for like things to kind of poof as you were applying it, because it is a bit more of like a dusty formula, but very smooth, and it doesn't feel dry. It just, for whatever reason, has a bit more kick up on there. So this is the first guy. You can kind of see as you are looking at it and it's zooming in on there that it's a bit more of a flaky consistency similar to this guy, and very, very pretty, but again, does have a good amount of kick up on there. Even with me just swiping my finger, it was already kicking stuff up. And so I'll see if I can get in, So I'll see if I can get in close for you guys on the next swatch so you can see what I'm talking about. Can we lay down, please? Precious stuff. Oh, hello. Here's my beautiful button. Thank you so much. All right, so here's the second one. I'm gonna see if I can swatch it where you guys can kind of see, like, as I pull my finger up, it is kind of launching the sparkles everywhere. And the other ones did not do that. Regardless of like my arm hair getting in the way, the others were not doing that same thing. So this one is definitely a bit more of a flaky consistency. You can see very beautiful kind of purplish shade. Starts off more on the blue side that you can see back here, and now you can really see a bit more of the pinkish undertones on that first one. And then when we come in close, two different versions of purple, a very light lilac and then a bit more of a medium toned purple. The third shade is definitely more on the kind of dry consistency, and let's go ahead and swatch that guy, but feels very smooth going on. It is just very sheer. So that is this guy. You can very much so tell that it is more on the sheer side in comparison to the other guys. You can see my skin the whole way through, so this one would need to be built up. But if you are someone that enjoys a nice sheer highlighter like I do, where it just adds that glow, this is a very beautiful one. And this will get you zero cast. I mean, you can see on here, you can see just my arm. You don't even see the swatch. And the swatch, when I come in close, you can see goes all the way to right there. And so, very nice if you are wanting just a sheer glow. The next one is kind of like an aquamarine, and we're back a little bit more to a smoother consistency. And yep, this one is also not quite as sheer as the one right before it, but still a bit on the like the bluish side. So we're not getting a ton of variation between like these three shades as far as like from back here, they look very similar to each other. They all look like some form of blue. And then when you come in close, they're all some form of purple, which is very interesting. And so of the like diversity of shades, this one is not super diverse in comparison to some of the other palettes, but the last two shades will definitely be different. So first up we have, it is definitely, I will also comment that I would imagine the flakiness of this is probably because I have had this for a couple of years already. Of note. So this is the kind of bronzy shade that we had in there, and it definitely kind of got everyone, but it's a bit more of a champagne-y kind of shade on here. It is not nearly as deep of a tone as what it looked like in the palette. You can see it's just a very neutral, very nice natural kind of highlighter. And then the last one is a yellowish green tone. And I will say I am very glad to have all of these other highlighter palettes, because I have a feeling that this guy is probably not going to last me too much longer. And so, bit of a bummer, but as with all of the makeup that I stop using because it's gotten a little bit too dry, I just turn them into little paint things or like add them to other crafting things that I'm doing. So here's the last shade, and it is a bit more of a yellowish green, but kind of comes across as a bit more white, but when I pull back, gives a bit more of a yellowish tone to it, but not nearly as standout as like the yellows and greens from the Blend Bunny palette. All right, next up we have from Electrum Cosmetics. This is the Daydreamer palette, and I think this is one of the newest highlighter palettes that I have gotten. I love that you can remove the pans and put them into a single eyeshadow palette if you would like, and this guy looks super interesting. I am very excited to kind of swatch and use this guy. I had used the Manifest shade, which is this guy right here, a bit more of like a greenish undertone, yellowish green, and then shifts into a bunch of things, and I really enjoyed it, so I am excited to swatch all of these guys for you guys. So for the first one, it is the Dreamer shade, which is that rainbowy guy, and it is looking so chromy. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I would wear this one as a highlighter, but I would for sure put this all over my eyes. So here it is. It has a bit of a lilac purple base to it that you can see, and then as you come in close, goes between yellows, blues. I mean, it is, yeah, definitely like some peachy tones in there, and then the yellow, green, blue that you can see. I mean, and then when you pull back, you can see a bit more of the purple into kind of pinkish tones. That is gorgeous. I would 1000% wear that as an eyeshadow. I don't know. I think because of the purple base to it, I would not wear it as a highlighter, just because you would be able to see the purple base, right? And so that's the one thing with highlighters, is if you have a colored base rather than just a sheer no color base, you will see that, and that is what will create that cast. So like if I turn my wrist, you can see the purple on there. So if I were to use my fingers to apply this, you would be able to see it even if I was facing directly straight forward, because you would be able to see the cast of that purple base to it. So this one I would for sure use on my eyes. If I was going to wear it as a highlighter, I would use a brush, and I would only apply it to like the very top portion closer to the temples, because if I brought it down anywhere close to the cheek, you would be able to see it the whole way through. But I think primarily I would just stick with that as an eyeshadow. Now the next one, it is a very chunky boy, very much so a flaky kind of highlighter. It has a pink as the primary tone on there, and you can see the amount of flaky when I bring it up on here. It is a very, very flaky highlighter. I would definitely recommend not using a brush, because this would go everywhere if you use a brush, but it is very, very beautiful, very pretty shade. I mean, look from back here, like these are like mirrors from back here, so they are gorgeous. But this guy is definitely more of a flaky kind of consistency, so you would want to use your fingers and press it in and kind of warm it up with the heat of your skin, so that the flakes can kind of disintegrate and then blend into the skin. The third one also is a bit of a pinkish, but I think between pinkish peach and like yellow, and not quite as flaky of a consistency. Oh yeah, definitely not as flaky, way more on the sheer side. So we already have 3 different formulas in this palette. So when you are looking at this guy, I am like swatching to the opposite direction. I was like, I'm gonna make it higher up. Let me actually get this to the part of my arm where you guys can see it. Sorry. There we go. So here is this guy, and you can see the difference in consistency. Still very nice and pink, but way more on the sheer side, and I mean, just absolutely beautiful. So if you're wanting chunky, this is your guy. If you're wanting not chunky and more sheer, this is your guy. All right, the fourth one starts off with kind of a yellowish green to blue, so many different shades, but I would say is very similar in formula to what we just swatched. Not quite as flaky, even though when you initially get it on your finger, it does seem very flaky. It blends right out. And so you can see that this is a bit more of like a greenish blue with yellow, and very similar in consistency to the one that we swatched right before it. Not nearly as chunky. Then we have, I would say like a cross between green and blue, like an aquamarine-ish kind of shade for the fifth one. And very similar in consistency to the other two. Ooh, has a light green base to it. So not quite clear, little bit of a limey green base. Ooh, and then like on my finger, I'm seeing like some pinks, and okay, it is a very pretty shade. So here we come in with it. You can definitely see the pink on there, which is not the primary shade. There's some blue, and then when we're all the way back here, you can see the greenish, coming close again, bluish into the pink as it's trying to focus. So very pretty shade. All 3 of these last ones that we swatched are the same type of formula. Very beautiful if you are wanting that just really nice glow with the pigment to it. Last shade starts off very bluish, but has like pinks and purples, and is a bit more on the chunky side, much like the one that we swatched in the beginning. You'll be able to see some of the chunks on this guy. So there is kind of the pinkish purple pull back, and there you can see the blue, but you can also see when we are in close that it is a little bit of a thicker consistency. Not quite as chunky as this one, but you can still see a little bit of some chunks. And so I would say it's like halfway between this formula and this guy, but all of them very, very beautiful and blendable. So it just kind of depends on what is your forte. We know I prefer the less chunky ones, and so the 3 in the middle are my favorite, and then this guy as an eyeshadow, gorgeous. I do think it's funny that so far we have had 3 different palettes that have included something that I would use as an eyeshadow instead of a highlighter, so that's kind of funny to me. I'm gonna go wash off my arms because I have run out of space for the last one, because if I try and attempt to bend my arm to show you guys all the way over here, it's just not gonna happen. Which is fine, because the last one that we're gonna swatch is the P. Louise palette. There are 8 shades in here, and the formula for this guy is not one that changes any tones. It is just 8 different shades that we have on here, which I think is very nice for different skin tones and depending on what your preference is, but it is not something where we would need to compare, is it identical to something else, because it is not shifty at all like any of the other ones that we swatch. So I'm gonna clean off my arms and then we will swatch that bad boy, and then we will wrap it up with my final thoughts. All right, so we are back with the final palette from P. Louise. This came out, I think, around summertime this year. It was released at the same time as the blush palette. I got both of these in my budget box, which was just absolutely amazing. I was hoping for both of them, so I was so excited. And this is what it looks like on the inside. Very beautiful, lots of different tones on there. I have definitely been digging into this guy because, again, it is a nice kind of yellowish green. So we will go ahead and swatch that guy first. And these are definitely shades that are more of your standard kind of highlighter formula that works really, really well with brushes. And so this is the first one. They are all going to probably swatch and look a little bit more on the dull side because, again, these are meant to be very natural kind of highlights rather than being super duper bold. And so they are going to be a bit more on the pastel-y kind of muted side, because when you use a brush, it's just going to blend in really, really nicely on there. So for applying these, I probably would not use my finger. I would just stick with a brush because that's going to give you the best application of it. The second shade goes a little bit pinkish to greenish. It's kind of interesting, but it's primarily pink on there. So you'll be able to see the difference in tone. But again, very muted shades. You can see a bit more of the yellowish, a bit more of the pinkish purpley, but very, very nice and muted, which really gives you that nice natural highlight. These are definitely not going to be ones that you would see from space by any means. They are going to be really nice and neutral. So the third one is a bit more of a kind of goldish shade, which would already be probably a bit too deep for my skin tone. But you can see a little bit of that gold on there. So we're already heading into probably slightly deeper than my skin tone. This would be a very nice, like, close to bronzer shade for me if I was just wanting to create like a little bit of a nice sun-kissed look. That would be a good shade for me. Then we have a very nice champagne-y peach tone, and that is this guy right here. So you can see just a very nice kind of muted peach tone on there. Very pretty. Then we go into a deeper kind of bronze tone, which is definitely heading into the deeper side of things where I would not wear that as a highlighter. So you can definitely see the difference between this guy, which comes across a bit more beigey, and then this one is a bit more orangey toned as it gets a little bit deeper. Then we have a beautiful kind of sparkly pinkish purple. I would say definitely leaning a bit more on the pinkish side, but very, very colorful. I would probably also not wear that as a highlighter, just because it is a bit too pigmented of a pink for my skin tone. But if you were someone with a medium skin tone, this would probably look really, really nice. Or you could utilize this as like a blush topper, would be really beautiful. Then we have a really nice kind of, I would say, burnt red shade that is going to look very bronzy. And this is for definitely deeper skin tones. Has a really nice kind of reddish undertone to it. I think looks very beautiful. This guy would be, for me, if I was looking for a very smoky, deeper blush, I might grab this if I was doing like a kind of a vampire-y goth look, but definitely too deep for normal natural looks. But I think this would be stunning as either a highlight or a blush topper. This would be stunning as either a highlight or a blush topper if you are someone that has deeper skin tones. Also very beautiful. And then the last shade looks really, really beautiful to me. It kind of has like a very pinkish base to it, and then like gold on top. So very interesting. Yeah, you can really see the pink base. And then when I come in close, you can see a little bit of goldish shimmer on top, which is really, really pretty with the way that it catches the light. Again, too deep for my skin tone, but I mean, that's the nice thing about this palette and the other blush palette that I had grabbed, is that they are definitely ones that would work for a lot of different skin tones. So very, very pretty. Several of them would work as blush toppers if you were someone that enjoys that. And so I think it's a very nice palette. I definitely use this guy if I am wanting more natural looking highlights, where it is just a little bit of that glow rather than the like beaming that you can sometimes get with some of these other palettes that we had. But I would love to know what you guys thought of everything. What was your favorite palette out of the ones that we swatched? I think honestly, my favorites, I love the cream formula in the Adept palette, so I am very interested to see when they bring out the Kitcher Black palette to see what that looks like. I also think that the Electrum Cosmetics shades were very, very beautiful, especially this guy. It is going to be an eyeshadow shade for me, for sure. I think I'm kind of torn between two palettes as far as like my personal favorite for just solid highlighters, and that's between the Blend Bunny and the Cosmic brushes. So if you can get a hold of either of these, I think you're going to be extremely satisfied, because they give a lot of really beautiful variety. They're not very expensive. I think the majority of the palettes were ranging around like $40-ish for the palette, and when you consider that you're getting 6 shades for the majority of them, that is very, very good, I think. Especially since they were very multi-chromy in nature. I think that that is well worth it, because you're spending approximately, I mean, if the palette's $40, you're spending like $7-ish per shade, which you can't beat that. And so I think it was very, very nice and reasonable. I think that the Adept Cosmetics one was the most expensive. I want to say it was around $60 or $70, but that is for a definitely more advanced formula, because you're getting these two absolutely stunning cream formulas. The first of the two pressed powder ones I think was very nice. This guy, definitely not a highlighter. It is 100% an eyeshadow. So that was kind of funny. Do I think it's worth the amount? No, I think you can get other highlights that are much, much better. Not better, but like more worth your money. And so I would say out of everything, probably grab the Blend Bunny if you have the opportunity. That would be the one that I would go to if I was going to get another one. So that's my thoughts, but I would love to know what you guys thought of everything. What is your favorites? Have you picked up any of the palettes that I showed you guys? If there's one that is a favorite of yours and I didn't talk about it, I would love to know what that is. But let me know either way. Give me a thumbs up down below if you liked it. Thumbs down if you did not, as we always do here. And if you made it to the end of the video and you have not yet subscribed, I would love it if you join us here. We talk a ton about indie brands. We swatch absolutely everything. We do colorful makeup. I've got definitely a colorful video coming up for you guys after we do the single eyeshadow collection, which is coming up in the next video. After that, I will be showing you guys the Sunset palette from Adept Cosmetics. We will be doing swatches and an eye look. It is an absolutely gorgeous fall palette. So that is coming up. Definitely check that out. But other than that, you guys just go have a good one.